Hello.
Your panel on. I overgive it to you. Thank you very much for everyone.
Hi, thank you, and I welcome Wolf Karl. I see you, Wolf. You just deboarded your plane, I think. Hope you found a good place here to tune in. And I see Nicolas Weber. Hi.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
I think in Portugal, and Philip Zimmerer, probably in Berlin.
No, Portugal as well.
Portugal as well. Everybody's in Portugal in the sun. Wolf is in the car. Great.
Hey guys.
That you could join. Hi. Our topic today, we have 30 minutes, so I could do a very quick intro of the panelists. Or our topic first, are DAOs the future of fundraising and the corporation itself? We want to have a quick chat into the opportunities and challenges around this new form of organizational governance. For instance, the approach, how is it actually done? We have two experts here who did it firsthand, let's say. The legal topics around that, and Wolf is, as a professor, very, very deep into that topic and did also publications around it. And also some issues around the management that come up, where you, Philip, and Nicolas also have really hands-on experience, I believe, from the recent launch of the DAOs. And maybe let me start with one quote from Wolf. I found that in a Cointelegraph publication. He says, once DAOs are jurisdictionally recognized, they will likely replace significant portions of existing business constructs. With this development, it is possible that intellectual property issues under existing law will resurface in the DAO context. That's one statement. I just throw it in here. So this highlights, so to speak, also that not everything is rosy, and we probably won't, let's say, move without any friction into a world where the DAO, with those communities that are investors, but also contributors to a new form of organizations arise, that this doesn't happen, let's say, without any friction. With that, maybe briefly, Nicolas, would you, or Philip, whoever wants to go first, would you want to give us a brief overview on your project and how you actually established the DAO? What do you see in it? Why did you go that way? And maybe also where are the challenges? Who wants to go first, Philip or Nicolas? Philip?
Go ahead, Philip.
Sure, I'll go first. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm a core contributor at Spool DAO, and the purpose of Spool, in our opinion, really lends itself to a DAO managed concept. And that is because Spool is permissionless middleware. It's essentially a smart contract stack that allows the composability, that enables composability for stablecoin DeFi, while also allowing to grow with the expansion of the DeFi ecosystem. That means that any new yield generators or innovations in this nascent industry coming up can be included seamlessly in our stack, while existing users just benefit from growing economics of scale by tapping into DeFi through Spool. And because it's a permissionless stack of smart contracts, it's essentially a permissionless revenue generating protocol that thrives on the addition of new strategies based on DeFi primitives being included. And that sort of stack needs to keep growing, and it needs to grow, let's say, independently of personal opinions. So we need sort of unbiased governance. And now we have a product that can be used by anyone without requiring anyone's permission, while still being reliant on growing and adopting to an ever-changing, quickly growing industry. And that's essentially almost made for wisdom of the crowds kind of approach. So plugging or growing that through a DAO just made total sense. And yeah, so me and a group of other people started it together.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been following that, and I've also, let's say, experimented with the DAO, as I'm also one small contributor there. But while doing that and following this launch process, I also realized that we had, for instance, in the funding period here, a very large contributor who basically bought in with a big stake. So I can imagine that this is also raising questions about who is behind that, what influence will they take, and how do you deal with these topics there?
Well, actually, that was pretty much dispelled immediately, because it turned out that was a pool wallet done by a private group that was then dispersed into 40 to 50 different wallets. But what it does do is it raises the question, what if it wasn't, right? What if it was one single person? And that is what a core reason why DAOs need to be bootstrapped with that in mind, right? A capital takeover in early stages. And that is why during the funding period, the LVP, we have only had a small portion of the total token supply reserved for that. And a large portion will just go out to users of the protocol in different ways, shape, or form. I don't want to get ahead of myself there, but this will be announced very soon. And there are certain methods that you can employ to ensure a decentralized distribution of your governance token, which you also need. But then there's a whole host of other issues that it's kind of a can of worms that we're opening here, right? Because then you need to ensure that the people participating in your DAO actually care about what they're voting on. So you kind of, then you have problems with voters' apathy and so on, right? So,
okay. Yeah. We dive deeper. I want to integrate in the discussion now, Nicolas, maybe from your perspective here with Metagame Hub. So maybe you can give us a brief overview of that, and why did you choose the DAO model? Why did you adopt it? What did you do to launch it? And briefly, maybe a few of the challenges there that you face.
Yeah, thanks so much. So in regards to Metagame DAO, in a nutshell, what we do is we have like two core pillars, right? We have on the one hand the pillar A, which is focusing on, let's say, establishing a decentralized, so to say, country in the metaverse, and therefore, though, following a metaverse agnostic approach by, acquiring metaverse assets in different metaverses, such as the Sandbox, such as Decentraland and others, and then basically collaboratively governing them. Because while people always talk about the open metaverse and the metaverse generally as something that's decentralized, they are, at least when it comes to land ownership, fairly centralized still. And of course, here we, as Metagame DAO, as a collective, want to, let's say, foster the decentralization by also then building culture hubs as well as GameFi ecosystems on top of the lands that we have in the treasury. And on the other hand, the second pillar that we follow is the pillar of, like, developing tools that help users navigate through the metaverse. So for instance, one tool is the Decentraland Land Editor, which is about to be launched, which is kind of like a pendant to the Game Maker, which the Sandbox has. In Decentraland, it's not yet as easy to build, so to say, stuff, right? Like in the Sandbox, for instance. Another tool that is already live is the evaluation tool. So we've developed an algorithm basically that allows you to find, first of all, undervalued lands, right? And for instance, the Sandbox as well as Decentraland, but also mainly allows you to then evaluate your respective land or the land that you want to potentially acquire. So that's interesting for single land owners or for larger players. And of course, when it comes to such a, let's say, topic that's like hyped, like the metaverse, one challenge, for instance, that we had was, okay, what metaverse do we actually start with, right? Because there's not going to be one metaverse to rule them all, but I think here the DAO aspect is quite crucial, because you have kind of these great minds coming together, collaboratively governing the directions, also first of all the tools, as well as generally the governance of what happens with the lands, right? And this then also subsequently led to other people also from universities in Germany, like the Metaverse Development Team, which is mainly coming, for instance, from the Aachen region and the university there, to join the DAO. And it creates like an open space for everyone to kind of shape what happens within the metaverse. And that's kind of also the core angle that we want to follow, right? That while of course the land ownership may be a bit centralized and the asset prices are just crazy appreciating, we do have to focus on the actual users that will populate the lands. And that's where we want to come in, because right now we may have that layer one, so to say, hype in the metaverse with all the land sales from the different metaverses. But what's really coming next are the applications as well as the communities that are built on top of the lands with these applications. And that's the two angles where MGH comes in. Yeah.
So there you want to basically leverage this concept of the DAO, that you have this, the users more or less, this community being also the owners of the whole, or partly owners of the whole ecosystem. Now, maybe to you, Wolf, when you hear this firsthand, let's say, experience here from two founders who recently raised a significant amount of money, both in the millions. I think Philip was the result recently, like 21 million or so, and also a 7-digit figure here with Nicholas, to get this thing off the ground. And when you look at, or I also, from my background, let's say, come more from a VC perspective to this over the recent years. What's your take on the whole topic? I mean, I brought your initial statement, so you're very positive about it, but where do you see the opportunities and challenges?
So first of all, congratulations. Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So congratulations to Nicholas and Philip. Great accomplishment. Let me start out by saying DAOs are only as good as their governance, right? So if you haven't managed to decentralize your governance, DAOs will, any DAO is subject to the exact same dynamics that we see in centralized systems. So that's where I spent my last 10 years building math models to accomplish this very idea of decentralized governance in autonomous and anonymous systems. And so I spent the last 3 years working with the DevX DAO to implement that exact design. So Philip and Nicholas, I would invite both of you to consider applying for a grant to experiment with this design. But even if you decide not to do that, let me say a few words about the issue that Oliver identified as to what...
You're breaking up, unfortunately. Can the others hear him?
Was able to buy...
You were breaking up shortly. Yeah, please repeat the last sentence.
Okay, so this idea of buying influence, right, is antithetical to any decentralized governance. So if you allow governance token to be purchased on DEXs, you are literally inviting attack vectors that are so massive that as soon as your system has significant TVL, somebody will inevitably think about attacking that system. Yeah, in the academic literature, we call that Arrow's impossibility theorem, among several others. So in order to avoid this very phenomenon, I mean, people are incentivized to do this to you, okay? In order to avoid this particular phenomenon, one needs to, in my opinion, and this is what we've written the book about, one needs to consider decentralized governance, and that starts with non-fungible tokens, right? So you use only reputation metrics that can be NFTs, it can be a credit system, it can be weighted keys, to account for the merit that people put into the system and how to get people to start engaging with the community. So in other words, people who engage with the community get non-fungible tokens. The more they engage, the more they vote, the more reputation tokens they get, and they're paid proportional to these reputation tokens, right? And so it's a two-token design. And I know that's not sexy, Philip, and I know that many venture capitalists are looking at this and are saying, oh, no, we want a utility token, and we want there to be governance rights to incentivize the community. And that's all fine. I understand all these arguments. The problem is, once you have significant TVL and you use a governance token that can be bought on exchanges, you're opening yourself up for all these attack vectors. And that is, especially in the very successful projects, is something that in the long run will not only haunt them, it potentially will destroy them. And so if you look at the trajectory that we have with DAOs, we have now about 10,000 DAOs around the world. It's probably going to be at 50 to 100,000 by the end of the year. There's a lot of DAO washing going on. Yeah, so we know what greenwashing is, and DAO washing is the same thing. People use this term that doesn't revolve around DAO governance to raise funds, and that is understandable.
Unfortunately breaking up.
Right? Nobody is critiquing that. The problem is, and it's wrong. If you don't have decentralized governance, all these projects are subject to these attack vectors. And if I was an investor, I would really want to know about this. I could go on and on, but I'll end here.
Yeah, no, very great insights, I think, Wolf. And I know I didn't know about the project here you mentioned. What is your take, basically? Nicolas, Philip, who wants to go first? Yeah, Nicolas?
Yeah, I can take this. I mean, I fully agree with Wolf, and I mean, Vitalik, right, also wrote an article about moving away from token-based governance models. So like it's something that has to come, right? Because at the end of the day, I also don't like necessarily the term just governance token as like a secondary market traded token that's just out there and can just be utilized. Generally, also from a legal side, if you launch a token, I mean, governance is always more a security than a utility token. You can have a DAO where a utility token is like functioning as an oil within the DAO's platform and can even, at least in the beginning, maybe have an impact per se on the governance, you know, also to have potentially, let's say, some more access to fundraisers and stuff. But in the long run, right, if you really want to have a sustainable model, I fully agree with Wolf that there should be mainly reputational based, you know, metrics that influence the governance, right? That should be based on the impact and the influence that you have and not your economic stake per se within the DAO, right? I think the balance here is really the key, right? So it's something for everyone. Yeah, that's definitely something that we're already looking at with MGH. Maybe to give some alpha, we're about to launch like a community pet NFT series in MGH, where the ownership of this pet series will then also have an impact actually on the governance, right? So we are already kind of going into this direction in a gradual approach. Yeah.
Cool, Philip, your take.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, to be honest, that economic incentives do somewhat, like, they can influence governance behavior to a very, very large degree. And by that, I mean that, like, we have to separate kind of the TVL of platforms, right? What Wolf said is absolutely correct, but you have to separate sort of the TVL in terms of what's the governance token lockup. And in the case of Spool, for example, what will be stablecoin lockups that are routed through Spool that are not kept by Spool. So the governance token is responsible to sort of set the metrics and the parameters under which the Spool smart contract stack operates. So it could, for example, vote in new risk models, vote in new DeFi yield generating strategies, and so on. But what it can't do is ever touch or influence the TVL that is actually flowing through it. So we always have to think about, when we ask the question of what attack vectors are we opening ourselves up to, I think the first question to ask is, what could an attacker potentially achieve? And then we need to design our governance model around discouraging, or in the best way, closing off these attack vectors entirely. So I think, yeah, Wolf, sure.
So that is Arrow's impossibility theorem, right? So Philip, you're right with the approach. The problem is, any stable and presumptively optimal governance scheme is subject to Arrow's impossibility theorem, which basically says that as long as it's stable, people will find ways around it and destroy it, right? So as an answer to that, in order to address this issue, you have to create dynamic evolutionary governance in DAOs, and the technology actually allows this, right? Now, it's way too much for this short conversation to dig into how that's possible. But Philip, I would like to encourage you to, we can continue this conversation offline. There are ways to do this and to do it right, okay? And that sets us up for the future of decentralized commerce, in my opinion, because that's what DAOs ultimately are for.
Great, great discussion and great comments. So essentially, the problems that we face in centralized organizations, we face them in the DAO context as well. And the challenge I see really is that we have a lot of enthusiastic founders here, a very young crowd, and building here and going out, building great products, and how to actually ensure this that this can continue, and this is actually developing in a positive way, in a positive trajectory. And what happens, maybe to add here, when those DAOs actually have to close contracts with the old world, yeah, that is probably a topic that is concerning me. Wolf? Yeah.
So it's all about legal wrappers. So this is a very sensitive subject for the DevX DAO, which I represent as a co-founder and architect. We spent over a year and a half, 3 years ago that is, just digging into legal designs, and we ended up in Switzerland, where you are, Oliver, I believe. This is the heaven right now, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm biased, guys, because I'm with the DevX DAO, so I'm completely biased. But the Swiss Model Association that we drafted with 3 different legal teams is absolutely beautiful. It allows us to sit on the sides in a safe haven, run the DAO through a legal wrapper, develop all these wallet relationships that are covered by limited liability out of the DAO legal wrapper in Switzerland, and wait and see what happens in Wyoming and all these other states. One quick anecdote, just to a friend of mine I just met in LA. He was present when the Wyoming legislature passed the DAO law, and he met with these guys afterwards over drinks in bars. And these guys are literally gunning for a fight with the federal government. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, so in this case, it transpired over drinks at night. Okay, I know this is anecdotal, so I apologize, but you know, people who want to build serious structures, the Wyoming law is for Americans is a way forward, but it will likely result in about a decade of litigation until we all know how this works. It also doesn't address the federal securities law issue. And as far as I'm concerned, we can all comfortably sit in Switzerland and see how American lawsuits turn out before we venture into this. Now, of course, America is the biggest market. We all want that to succeed, right? So it's very important to get this right.
Very interesting statement, and I know because I've been in discussions with Nicolas on the Wyoming options, because we are discussing here several projects already where we had this issue in a, let's say, DAO construct that tries to build a community around stars and celebrities, where you could basically tokenize their reach in social media, and how to set this up, the whole governance structure, and so on and so forth. So I think we will take that discussion further. And I personally also, because I look at the time, we have one more round, let's say, to wrap this up. I would like and love to continue this conversation with all of you, also in the context of the projects we are currently planning here in the carbon stablecoin topic, for instance. We are addressing also probably in this topics with the celebrities. Now, if I give the word again here to Philip and and then to Nicolas, what are your biggest topics, let's say the topics that keep you up and awake at night, let's say, in moving forward, in establishing the structure right now, yeah, for the next, let's say, few months or so?
I think that Wolf has already tackled this issue because Spool, for instance, was started as a pure DAO, so a DAO first project. There was no actual single entity or person involved in creating it. It was a pretty large group of people, what we call the pre-DAO, that then set essentially the parameters for what ultimately became the Spool DAO. And now we're looking at several options to sort of create a foothold in the traditional world that actually can sign certain contracts and so on. So right now, there is no real, like, nothing that super pressures us into that direction, because again, it's like we have the luxury of our product being a freely accessible stack of smart contracts, and that makes it a little bit simpler. But still, at some point, if you essentially start hiring service providers or start like signing contracts and so on, that's when you start to require like some sort of entity that like undertakes these things, because like, for us, it's a luxury to sit in our decentralized world and do all of this like that. But as soon as you get to someone that wants just to have a regular job and you want to hire them, they will require a proper contract and not something like, oh, we're going to send some stable coins your way every month and that's it. So yeah, that's sort of the thing that we're pursuing right now. We already have a few avenues. Wolf just gave me another one to research, so thank you for that.
Hey everybody,
and, yeah,
I
that's it.
have to unfortunately.
Oh, I think just 30 seconds, Nicolas.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, generally, and this may be a bit bold, I'm a big fan of the statement, like guys like Jamie Burke coin, like nation states will subordinate to the metaverse at some point, but this is quite far away. And I think the biggest thing, or the most crucial thing for me, is just to protect everyone involved from liability. I mean, that's the core aspect that you have to do when you establish a DAO. And from our side, I mean, like I see generally two types of DAOs, right? The DAO LLC / digital legal entity model, which to me is it's the more decentralized legal entity, which is not necessarily a DAO, and then the true decentralized DAOs, where entities fulfill the role of contributors maybe to the DAO, that fulfill certain tasks or contribute certain resources or even have that liability aspect. So that's from my side quickly in a nutshell.
Sorry, Wolf, guys, thanks a lot. We are running out of time. I have to hand over and hand back to Carl. I hope that we stay in touch and continue the discussion offline in a different context. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Great
Bye,
panel,
guys.
guys.